Shawn Michaels is a new World Heavyweight Champion. Do you believe in miracles? By God, after 4 years in retirement, one match under his belt, the new World Heavyweight Champion. By God, HBK. See, that's how you tribute Jim Ross. You do a really bad impression in good taste. But I'll tell you one goddamn thing, Jim Ross. I certainly believe in miracles, and a miracle needed to happen with Shawn Michaels' haircut choice and wardrobe choice, because good goddamn Christ almighty, down in the goddamn HBK Bayou, what the fuck was that combination? Literally anything else would have been better. I'm Charles Renton with the Retro Review of WWE Survivor Series 2002 from Madison Square Garden, the swallowed halls of Madison Square Garden. I think that's how that saying goes. Arguably up there with the greatest Survivor Series of all time. A hot crowd, matches that made sense. There were a few more botches on this show, and I actually remember. I mean, I haven't watched this show in a while, but I do remember there was a string of really good pay-per-views in 2002. Like, WWE hit the ground running, even if they did stumble a little bit, and then they were WWF for a few months and then went to be WWE because they had to get the F out. Then they lost Austin, then they lost The Rock for a time. But yeah, that being said, Survivor Series 2002, they had around 17,930 fans. They had 340,000 pay-per-view buys. Pretty goddamn good. And I did talk about, with the Survivor Series 1999 Retro Review, that 2000 did pretty well. 2001 did pretty well as far as buy rates, but it did not do nearly as well with crowd size. The Greensboro Memorial Coliseum was half full. Madison Square Garden was pretty jam-packed, and I liked the stage setup. I really thought that was actually kind of neat, the minimalist stage. And the fact that it wasn't quite as good as the Royal Rumble 2000 setup and everything with the road and all that. But Survivor Series 2002, all things considered, even with the issues, and even with that main event, I understand why the main event went as long as it did, but given the fact that Triple H did suffer a near career-altering trachea injury, or throat injury of some variety, I think maybe larynx, he basically probably should have called a goddamn audible, and they probably should have gone to the finish about 10 minutes before they did. Because I hate to say it, as great as the Elimination Chamber started out as, it did get a little bit muddled down to the point now the Elimination Chamber doesn't really mean much of anything. Triple H probably should have called the goddamn audible, and then maybe he would have been okay, because, yeah, proper strength and proper determination to get through that, but also stupid. Speaking of stupid, let's talk some facts and figures. So, let's talk about 2003 Survivor Series, which, for those who don't own a calendar or don't understand how numbers work, took place a year after this. They were in Dallas. 13,487 fans, 450,000 pay-per-view buys. A Fall from Grace was the title. Fitting, given the fact that Shane McMahon and Kane had a match, and then they did the thing where Austin got fired as a GM, but then came back as the sheriff because he was the law, because they didn't know what the fuck to do with Austin because he had a bad neck and couldn't wrestle anymore, at least until WrestleMania 38. 2004 Survivor Series with the Gun Arena in Cleveland, Ohio. 17,500 fans and 325,000 pay-per-view buys. So just a shade below this. But let's talk about 2002's pay-per-view lineup. Now, the Royal Rumble was in Atlanta. 16,106 fans and 670,000 pay-per-view buys. Pretty goddamn good. Decent Royal Rumble with some good returns, and also Val Venis. And they did have Flair versus Vince, known Pest, by the way, the Pest match. Whichever one loses has to confess all their crimes, their various crimes against women. Some are alleged, I probably should say that. No Way Out 2002 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 15,291 fans, 575,000 rather pay-per-view buys. NWO showed up. We did see some pretty good stuff overall. We did see Austin lose to Chris Jericho because the NWO interfered. And we got a decent card. I mean, I still argue that one was a decent show. Wasn't a great show. I probably need to rewatch it at some point. I retro-reviewed so many things, especially from 2019 onwards, even reduxing some of them. And it's so many during the pandemic, 2020 and 2021, that I've really lost count of how many retro reviews I've done. Now, WrestleMania 18, really just a one-match show, if we're being perfectly honest. like outside of Rock and Hogan, I'm not saying there weren't other good matches, but Rock and Hogan was really about it. That was really it. It was at the Sky Dome. It had 68,327 fans. Bullshit. Probably about 60,000. But they did manage to get 860,000 pay-per-view buys, which I think is right around the mark that WrestleMania 14 did, or close to it. So Backlash was at the Kemper Arena, where nothing bad ever happened in WWE's history. Shut up. Should have stopped over the Edge 99. They still should have. They had about 12,500 fans. They had 400,000 pay-per-view buys. That was one of that was a pay-per-view where they were starting the brand split. They were going to establish brand white supremacy. Wait, that's just Vince. And that was actually one of the last pay-per-views that Scott Hall wrestled on because, yeah, Scott Hall wasn't in very good shape. I mean, rest in peace, Scott Hall, but whoo boy. And then they went to Insurrection, Chris Jericho's wife's favorite pay-per-view, that dumb bitch that hopefully will pay for her crimes one day in another life. So, Wembley Arena, not Wembley Stadium, as hilarious as that would have been to see 9,300 people there. But yeah, it was a UK pay-per-view, no idea on the pay-per-view buys. Because they do different shit over there. Judgment Day 2002. Unfortunately, Undertaker versus Hogan, which was not very good. It did have some other good action. That just wasn't one of them. So they were in Nashville, Tennessee, about 14,500 fans, and they had 370,000 pay-per-view buys. So, okay, they're starting to go down a little bit, but you know what? Given the fact that the pay-per-view quality was actually pretty good, it maybe not always at the top, but the pay-per-view quality on the undercard was pretty good. Them still able to have this amount of pay-per-view buys actually is, decent. King of the Ring night 2002, I believe Triple H took on the Undertaker, if I recall correctly, but they were in Columbus, and they had about 14,200 fans, and they had 320,000 pay-per-view buys. That's where the Bork Laser won the King of the Ring. Vengeance 2002, I still argue one of the best B pay-per-view shows that WWE ever put on. Like, top to bottom, that's a great goddamn... Even the worst match is still pretty good. They were in Detroit. That was the Joe Louis Arena, which I believe got torn down at some point. They had 12,000 fans there. Not as big as they had for some previous events, but still 375,000 pay-per-view buys, so they were up 50K from King of the Ring. SummerSlam at the Nassau Coliseum, they had about 14,800 fans, 540,000 pay-per-view buys. Arguably the greatest SummerSlam ever, or right up there. Shawn versus Triple H, Rock versus Bork, Ray and Kurt opening up the goddamn show. It really, really good stuff, in all honesty. Like, pretty damn good. And there's other stuff in there, but those are like the three to stand out in my mind. Unforgiven at the Staples Center, which is now the Crypto.com Arena. Whatever. 16,000 fans. They had 300,000 pay-per-view buys. So, not great. And by the way, the Taker-Brock main event was... It did have Flair, and Jericho having a match over the Intercontinental title that was decided so last minute they superimposed the Intercontinental title over Jericho's shoulder. I mean, really, take a fucking look at the promotional stuff for this if you can Google it. You will see what I mean. And, yeah, it did have Triple H versus RVD. Why don't you defend that title against me tonight? RVD actually could cut a halfway decent promo, but... He was popular enough to be a world champion, but he was not popular enough to stay a world champion. They were in North Little Rock for No Mercy, where Taker and Brock had one of the best Hell in a Cell matches ever, in my opinion. And a decent card, of course, granted, this was during the whole Katie Vick angle that certainly was a Vince idea. And I'm going to just goddamn blame Triple H for it, too, because Triple H is a bit of a weirdo, too. 10,000 fans, they had 300,000 pay-per-view buys. So, okay, they're kind of just treading water at this fucking point. Rebellion was in Manchester, England. Almost said New Hampshire. That wouldn't have made sense, because who the fuck wants to go to Manchester, New Hampshire? Certainly not a lot of fans in AEW. But 13,400 fans, and it was UK pay-per-view. No idea what the buy rates were. They go to Armageddon, which was just after this, by the way. Sunrise, Florida, 9,000 fans, 335,000 pay-per-view buys. 3 stages of hell match with Triple H and Shawn. as well as Kurt versus Big Show. That'll put butts in seats. And actually, I don't remember that card aging all that well. I mean, I probably need to go back and watch it, but I think Batista and Kane had a match. I think they did. So then let's just finish it off with going calendar to calendar. Let's go to the 2003 Royal Rumble. They were in Boston, 15,300 some odd fans, 585,000 pay-per-view buys. So they were starting to sink a little bit. Now, granted, they would increase. Their pay-per-view buy rates actually were pretty good for a while, but they really would start to sink with the brand split, like to where SmackDown pay-per-views were not doing that well. At least they wouldn't fully sink until ECW December to Dismember. They had like 90,000 pay-per-view buys because it was a terrible show and not promoted well. So let's talk about this particular pay-per-view. It was the debut of the Elimination Chamber, another ingenious creation from the mind of Eric Bischoff. Whatever. I didn't mind the Chamber initially, but I'll be perfectly honest. Between the watering down of that and Hell in a Cell, it is a dead heat to figure out which match means less. Drew McIntyre and Triple H. As hilarious as that would have been, Drew McIntyre and CM Punk had a great Hell in a Cell match for this time. But really, name the last really great Chamber match where it seemed like impactful. And yes, you need to have stuff be safer. And Hell in a Cell, you need to have, you have to, because you have a bigger investment in these talents, they can't go fully on out, but then don't book these matches unless they're blood feuds. JR and Kane call Raw, and Cole and Taz call SmackDown. The Minimalist set was really, really cool. The theme for this was Always by Saliva. I would argue their best song, that and Click, Click, Boom. So, the Heat match, by the way, was Storm and Regal, part of the Un-Americans, against Goldust and Hurricane. By the way, the Un-Americans had Test in the group, and, excuse me. I apologize, by the way, if I sound a little off sometimes when I get energized, but winter weather, is coming. And my voice is kind of shot from doing this shit all these years, so sometimes it gets a little bit rough. I'm also in my mid-40s. So, Test was now with Stacy Keibler. You know who you are. You stop thinking about being with Stacy Keibler. You know who you are. It's one of my mutuals. He's going to hate it if he sees this. But I won't say the name, so he's going to have to call himself out. Jeff Hardy teamed up with Bubba Ray and Spike Dudley to take on 3-Minute Warning, the late Rosie, the late Jamal, and Rico. The fact that Rico was on the AEW Wrestle Dream pay-per-view and I actually got to be there live to see it, that was actually pretty cool. To think that he's in his early to mid 60s and still in pretty good shape. So it's a 6-man elimination table match that is. Pretty good action. Jeff was not in a good place at this point. He was botching a lot. He was hitting some good stuff, but Spike got put through the table first. Jeff did the 2000 Rumble Swanton spot off the entranceway onto Rosie, so he's gone. Jeff then basically was late to stop Rico, so Rico had to stand there for an eternity, like, what do I do? Let me trip myself. Good job, Jeff. So, Jeff slipped on the barricade and hurled himself stupidly through a table, as Jeff is known to do. And then Jeff got basically splashed by Umaga through the table. So now it's 2-on-1. But then Umaga got powerbombed through a table, so now it's down to Bubba and Rico. But then because they're dastardly heels, it's 3-on-1 suddenly, and it looks like Bubba's going to lose. Suddenly Devon shows up. No longer Reverend Devon. They abandoned that because they realized it was absolute dog shit, because him just saying, oh, my brother, testify, was not a reason to give him a pastor gimmick. Devon showed up and basically took out Jamal and Rosie, 3D to Rico, and Bubba Ray survives. The Dudleys reunite, and there we are. Big pop, by the way, for Devon. Very big pop. And then Stacy was at WWE New York, or WWE World, that shut down in 03 or 04, I believe. And then Billy Kidman. Billy Kidman's theme never really fit him in WWE. Listen to the lyrics and tell me if that matches a white guy like Billy Kidman. So he took on Jamie Noble with Nydia for the Cruiserweight Championship. Kidman had been able to best Noble recently on television, but this is for the title. It's not bad, but I would argue that not only was this a cool-down match, this was a match where they should have just put it on TV. Now, I get why they put it here. They had built it well. And Nydia, I like Nydia. I'm glad to see, apparently she's doing well. Mutual Mind told me that she went back to cooking school, or went into cooking school. Good for her. I got to see one of her last appearances, at least on television, at Raw right after Unforgiven 04. It was a draped DDT by Noble. Noble was a good worker. He was just never going to get beyond this level in WWE. And the Shooting Star pressed. It always looked like Kidman was about to bounce off the ropes like he did in WCW and just botch it or hurt somebody. Not that he was careless. It's just, it's hard to control how he did that. And he did it great, don't get me wrong. But there are others that did it a lot prettier and a lot safer. Maybe not safer to their knees, but safer to their opponents. Kidman got the victory, though, and would hold it until he dropped the Cruiserweight title to Matt Hardy at, I believe, No Way Out 2003. So then Kurt is trying to get Benoit all fired up and everything, and to think both these men could have gone down the same path, except Kurt got clean. So, tag team partners don't shake hands, they hug, and they've been having this on-again, off-again partnership, antagonistic thing about them. And this is to hype up the three-way elimination tag match coming up later. So, then Crazy Victoria did something to me. I'm just going to say that. I mean, she was great. And Victoria still is great. I mean, I don't think she's wrestling anymore. I mean, she can. I mean, it's her body. She can do what she wants. But, no, I fucking loved her. Like, at, 20. I remember seeing her as one of the Godfather's ladies of the evening, I'll just say. She had a good look, and she went back to, to wrestling school. She really did sink her teeth into it. And I would argue really needed to be used a whole lot better after, like, 2005. And I'm not knocking her and Candice and Tori teaming up as Vince's Devils. I'm not knocking that. I just feel you could have put them in the ring and used them better. I'm just saying, because Victoria's the best worker at all, and Candice improved. Tori wanted to do more, and they never allowed her. But I'm just saying you could have displayed equal parts, them being catty and them being in the ring. So, it was a hardcore match against Trish Stratus for the Women's Championship. And, for 7 minutes, they packed a lot of action in. I mean, they already had weapons around the ring. So, yeah, okay, it's dressed up a little bit. The headshots, Jesus Christ, I'm glad they took those out. And then Victoria had the broom. Is she going to, use the broom or ride it? I don't know why that made me laugh. And Victoria was bleeding from the nose. She did kick out of the chick kick. And then eventually there was a bulldog botch out of the corner. That didn't work. I mean, these things happen. Jeff botched more. I'm just saying, it's like, ooh, that could have ended badly. But an extinguisher spot, and Trish is blinded. A snap suplex wins it. I would have thought we would have gone more impactful, but whatever. Victoria gets a victory. These two would go on to have great matches in 2003, so there we are. So, Jonathan Coachman talks to Eric Bischoff. The Xbox blimp in the back just proves how old this goddamn pay-per-view is. And then Big Show tells Bischoff, you're going to regret trading me or not trying to, use me better. Then Heyman tells Brock, you have a broken rib, you've been coughing up blood, but this is no time for that. We're going to go out there, and you're going to beat Big Show. Except he didn't. Now, Brock apparently did have a legit busted rib. So I guess they felt they needed to have him take some time off. I guess. Let's go Lesnar chants. They were chanting pretty goddamn loud. Because they chanted Let's Go Lesnar at SummerSlam 2002, which was in Nassau, and still in New York. I mean, a different part of it, obviously. But they kept it short. We got some power moves. We got a ref bump. Heyman slid the chair in, and then we got a headshot on Big Show. We got an F5 on the chair, but then Heyman broke up the pin. Lesnar goes to chase Heyman, gets in the ring. This is when Heyman wasn't the size of a hot air balloon. And then, a chair shot, chokeslam on the chair, kicks it out. 1, 2, 3. Big Show gets the victory. Crowd was booing. They were not very happy. They ran, Big Show and Heyman ran out and got in a Lincoln Continental, I believe, which is rich Corinthian leather. How's that for a data reference? There's like 3 people watching this will fucking get that reference. So, tag title recaps, the tag team tournament, all the stuff going on. And that's actually, if I remember right, it was Kidman and Cena in that tournament where they would end up kind of branching Cena off to become the doctor of thugonomics and everything. And first a heel, and then because he was so popular, he was getting popular. Believe it or not, Cena was popular at one point before people started saying, let's go Cena, Cena sucks. They would have them have a brief feud. That was about it. I mean, I think they might have actually finished that off already because Kidman won the title here. But it's Kurt and Benoit against Los Guerreros, Eddie and Chavo, against Ray and Edge. It was nice that they had the Rob Zombie theme here, and Kurt Angle getting to use Suck chance. And, you know, Prime Kurt Angle is like 5 levels above pretty much everybody else. I mean, it's insane. I'm glad he's still around, but Jesus Christ. How do you think Kurt Angle would have been? If Kurt Angle had been able to stay in better shape, if, you know, he had been able to get some help for his addictions. Because, yeah, eventually you do need help. And he got clean, not knocking him. You have to wonder how much better Kurt would have even been. But, hey, tag team wrestling featured properly. Elimination tag, one person gets pinned, their team's eliminated. Eddie chants, and, you know, this was pretty goddamn good. They really did some good stuff. Chavo was probably the least of these 6 here, because Chavo's always been the least of anybody in there, because, let's be perfectly honest, Chavo, he was lucky that he had the Guerrero last name, because otherwise nobody would have fucking cared. But at one point they said, Benoit says, turn out the lights, the party's over. Nancy found that out. I'm sorry, except I'm not. Because I have to make something about that, because otherwise I'm going to want to dig up, you know, Benoit's corpse and piss on it. So, belt shot hits Benoit. Chavo hands it to Kurt, you know, throws it to Kurt, gets out. And then we get more fracas and more arguing and everything. And then a spear on Benoit. 1, 2, 3. So Benoit and Angle are eliminated. But then they take out the other teammate, or the other teams. But then they're still kind of arguing, because this would build to Royal Rumble 2003. And where Kurt at least would, you know, Kurt and Benoit would have a great goddamn match. So there were a lot of boos. Edge got targeted for a while. Ray tried to attack Eddie for the finish. Belt shot to him again. And then Ray got locked in the lasso from El Paso and tapped out. So Eddie got the victory. And there we are. Now, that was actually pretty good. Pretty goddamn good, pretty goddamn good 3-way. Oh my. So, Chris Nowitzki showed up. I'm glad that Chris was able to do something with his experience in wrestling and do stuff for concussion research. Even if that hadn't happened, even if he hadn't gotten a concussion or gotten a couple of concussions, like in succession, I don't know if it really would have worked out for him to be in wrestling much longer. But nevertheless, he knocks New York. Matt Hardy comes out. They do a stupid and losers a looped thing. It's really bad. Really bad. Because Matt Hardy version 1 was actually pretty good. But yeah, this went on forever. I mean, it didn't, but it seemed to. Scott Steiner showed up, and one point they had to cut away because he said, give me a fucking mic. This is after he laid out both of them. Big Papa Pump is your hookup. Holler if you hear me. We're Steiner chants. And that's good. He got a big pop. He got a big goddamn pop, so I can't fault that. So, Scott Steiner showed up. Unfortunately, the drop foot that he had, where it's like his foot didn't have like feeling or whatever the fuck it was, and he had to tape it up. And that's why him and Triple H had stinky matches. That wasn't the only reason, because let's be honest, both men were fucking juiced to the point where both couldn't move. I mean, Triple H could move decently, but I wonder why Triple H ended up having a lot of heart issues with all the juicing that he did. I mean, come on, guys. Like, I'm not saying they're the only ones, but it's pretty ridiculous. So, while Shawn Michaels is getting interviewed, the RNN, the Randy News Network, shows up. Randy had suffered the busted shoulder. I mean, I believe that's what it was. Shoulder or collarbone? I think it was shoulder. But he would always give updates. My shoulder's like at 30-something% or 40-something%. It was a good way to turn Orton heel because he was not getting good reactions. So, that was good, pretty good. They gave the last hour basically to the remaining build of this whole thing and the main event. Triple H says he's got a first-class ticket to hell. Who's going to come with him? Ric Flair goes out to the ring with him. But first, Eric Bischoff comes out with his lengthy pipe in hand and goes over the rules and takes a long time to explain this. Basically, 6 men are in the match. 2 men start out. Every 5 minutes, the pod opens. You're eliminated by pinfall or submission when you can't take it anymore. And there's chain all around the goddamn, for the cage, the cell, the chamber, whatever it is, and all around the goddamn floor. And people take a lot of goddamn hard bumps that really look kind of brutal. So it's an elimination chamber match. It is Shawn Michaels with the stupid bob and brown tights because he apparently lost his gear, which, yes, okay, you have to make stuff on the fly. But the hair, Shawn, the hair. If Jesus told you that hair was a good thing, you need to listen to another Jesus. So, him and his stupid tights and haircut showed up. He would be one of the 4 in the pods. Booker would be one of the 4 in the pods. Jericho would be one of the 4 in the pods. So would Kane. And RVD and Triple H would start out. Makes sense. All these guys have been involved with Triple H in one form or another. Triple H was involved in a feud with Chris Jericho. They extended from WrestleMania 18 all the way to, I believe, Judgment Day 2002, which had a Hell in a Cell match that's actually pretty forgotten. Totally forgot to mention that earlier. Triple H and Booker T would get involved a little bit later for a feud that certainly should have done more for Booker than it did. Kane and Triple H came off of the horrible Katie Vick angle, and RVD and Triple H had had their match at Unforgiven. And also, Shawn Michaels and Triple H, longtime friends, SummerSlam 2002, really good stuff. I would argue that this match went on about 10 minutes too long for a couple reasons. One, I'm not saying you need to rush the finishes, but this thing, it went to 2 hours and 44 minutes, and yeah, it ended before the overrun fees would have kicked in. Had this match ended even 5 minutes earlier, would it have mattered? No, I don't think it would have. Yes, there were impactful moves. People sold them well enough, but I would argue still went too long. Triple H was bleeding very early on. RVD got a chance to shine, but he also was the first man eliminated. Jericho came out next. RVD did the spider walk cross-body. That was pretty good. He did do the 5-star frog splash off the goddamn pod and ended up, unfortunately, he jammed his knee and he also injured Triple H's trachea, larynx, I forget which. But credit to Triple H for powering through it. But again, honestly, if he was that hurt, what you should have done, I mean, he took some time to recover, but if he was that hurt, you could have cut this down by 10 minutes. You really could have. So, a missile drop kick, RVD gets eliminated first, and we get a lot of boos. Nothing against Booker, but people wanted to cheer RVD and wanted to see RVD succeed. And I'm not saying RVD should have won this match, but if you had Booker be the first eliminated, would it really have mattered? I mean, fuck, you could have just gone to where Kane was the first eliminated. Kane comes out 5th, and a choke slam to Booker. A Lion Salt eliminates him. But then Shawn comes out last. Kane gets eliminated by Jericho. So we're pacing this well. But then Shawn gets busted open. And Sweet Chin Music on Jericho gets the victory for, to knock it down to 2 people. As naturally comes down to best friends Triple H and Shawn. And they go back and forth. They do some good stuff. Still Triple H battling through the busted, trachea, larynx, whatever. And hits a pedigree, but can't make the cover. And then eventually Shawn fights out, hits Sweet Chin Music. 1, 2, 3, confetti, all that stuff. Do you believe in miracles? And yeah, honestly, one of the best Survivor Series of all time. At least top 5, possibly top 3. I'm trying right now to think of a better one. So I may retro-review another Survivor Series before we get to Survivor Series 2024 on November 30th. No promises. But I decided instead of reviewing current stuff, because the current stuff, A, is boring me and not necessarily getting me I'm not getting the most joy out of it, decided to revisit a couple that I really like. So, you're getting movie reviews a little bit later on, just so you know a lot of stuff. And thank you guys very much for tuning in. So, I do want to also say, in closing, I'm still on Twitter, but I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky, and I'm on Letterboxd. And you can always comment to me here, and I'll try to answer when I can, because there's certain things happening with some social media sites that I'm not liking. I'm also getting burned the fuck out on things. So, yeah, that being said, Survivor Series 2002, pretty goddamn good. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.